Wel welcome to the Comic Sauce Podcast, where we talk comics and comics culture. I'm Porfirio Rangel, and today is November 8th, and I'm joined by Henry Liu. Happy belated birthday, Henry.
Hello, thank you very much. Happy to
So,
be here with you all.
yeah, I'm excited to be here with you. Quick question. Who is your favorite witch from pop culture?
Oh, wow. Surprise question right off the bat. Favorite witch? Oh man. You didn't give me prep time for this question, but let's see. Um well, I do think the Scarlet Witch is pretty cool. So I'm gonna say Wanda.
You know me, I agree with you 100%.
There you go.
And I'm also joined today by Christian Diadamo. Hey Christian, who's your favorite witch from pop culture?
Hey, well, I'm doing well. Well, my favorite witch from pop culture is I'm gonna go the DC route. I'm choosing Raven. Yeah,
Oh, cool. Nice
good old
pick.
Teen Titans.
Yeah. And today we have two very extra special guests today. One is the birthday girl, Megan Stone. Happy early birthday, Megan. And who is your favorite witch?
I know I've had a moment to think about it. Can I say Joe Locke as Wiccan? I mean, that's in the theme of the episode.
Okay, yeah. Um, and our other special guest, Michelle Stone. Who's your favorite witch from pop culture?
Hey, I'll pick one that's not comic book related if I can. I'm gonna go with Winifred from
I
Hocus
knew you were gonna
Pocus.
say. I knew you were gonna say that. That's why I said what I said because I knew it.
I had a backup witch in case you chose mine.
And so today we are going to have a theme talking about witches. And today's episode, we're going to talk about Agatha All Along, the Disney Plus show. And so this is we're going to talk all spoilers, so spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't finished watching the show. The show's been out for a week already. And so let's get right into it. So I feel like this is a full circle moment for all of us reviewing this show because we all during the pandemic watched WandaVision together, and here we are now reviewing Agatha All Along, which is a spin-off character show from WandaVision. So before we get into the episode, what were your thoughts about an Agatha spin-off being created and your thoughts before the show even started? Christian, want to start us off?
Yeah, so going back to WandaVision, I did really enjoy WandaVision when it came out. I think that I heard rumors of like an Agatha show in the mix for like a while back. And I don't know. I wasn't honestly too hyped for it. I liked Agatha in the show, but I was like, oh, a spinoff on Agatha. I really didn't know the character. I never like really saw much. I don't think I ever read a comic with her in it. And I was like, I don't know about this one. I might skip it. And I think this came in like I think a long time had kind of passed also since WandaVision. So I think the hype had died down a bit for me for, a spinoff of it, so, eh, I was pretty lukewarm on it, honestly.
Hmm hmm What about you, Michelle? Thoughts about an Agatha spin-off and any, yeah, like where was the bar set before even watching this show?
I think I'm like the opposite. I had like quite high expectations. I was like super excited for it. I think after watching WandaVision, I really liked Agatha. I thought she was a very like powerful character. And then to be honest, like I've grown up watching Catherine Hahn like in all my rom-coms and just she's been in everything from like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days to like the more recent projects like The Glass Onion, but always as like side characters. Like she's never been like the main character. So to be able to see her have like her own show, like to be the star, I was super excited to see her kind of shine there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. She's an amazing actress. Yeah, let's give her props on that. And yeah, so let's talk about Agatha. The first thing I want to talk about is the music, specifically the ballad. You know, like that ballad, I showed all you guys. I've loved it when they showed it at Disney Expo, and it is just genius writing. Like, it's the ballad is the name. Each episode is like a lyric from the ballad, and if you just pay attention, it just foreshadows kind of everything that's going on in the show. But like, what are your thoughts about the ballad? Did it change throughout the show or anything? Henry?
Yeah, the song is an integral part of the show, no question. And and it gets in your head. It's a very catchy song, and like it was an earworm in my brain for a long time. Like not even like intentionally. It's not like I played the song like when I wasn't watching the show or anything. But yeah, it's just one of those tunes that like gets in there, and I guess in that respect, it was very effective because I think it was purposefully made to be like that. It was made to be memorable and it was made to get in your head. So I guess the show did a good job with that.
Did you like the song?
I wasn't the hugest fan of the song, and you did hear it a lot, like a lot.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a reason why like I couldn't get it out of my head exactly.
Hmm.
But I will say it's catchy, and I could understand why a lot of people would like the song.
Okay. What about you, Megan? Any thoughts on the ballad?
I love the ballad, of course. I cannot remember their names right now, but the writers of the ballad also wrote, to my understanding, the like song from WandaVision. Is that
Hmm.
something?
That's true, yeah.
Also wrote like Remember Me from Coco and Let It Go, I think from Frozen as well, right? So I had high expectations for the song. The first time I heard it like in the show, I was like, okay, cool, like intense, but cool. And then, like you said, as you go through, like the lyrics become so important. And then in that like 70s episode when they all like do the rock version of the song, cannot get it out of my head, don't want to get it out of my head, play it on my way to work, play it on my way home from work, play it when I'm cleaning, when I'm cooking. I love it.
Uh, what about you, Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more on the band. I really liked it too. I thought it was, but I also like all the other songs she mentioned from Disney. Like, I'm a big fan of like Disney music in general. So
Hmm.
I'm the kind of person that will listen to Disney music too, like while I'm like like cleaning, cooking, whatever. So I thought it was good. I thought it was very catchy. It was played a lot. I give Henry that. Like, it definitely was played a lot. But I also don't think I'm glad they didn't play it in like every episode. Like, I'm glad not like every trial revolved around the song. Like, that would have been, I think, overkill. So I'm kind of glad they limited it to like when it was needed or when it was important. But it was a lot, I will say.
And like all you guys have mentioned, there were a lot of versions of this song. There was, yeah, the ones that the Coven all sing in episode 2. There's Lorena Wu's version. There's the 70s cover version that the Coven sing in episode 4. There's a true crime version. It's the intro of episode 1. And then there is like another version in the final episode with Agatha like revealing that like the ballad doesn't mean anything, but that she uses it to like, you know, lure other witches in and steal their power and kills them. There's a lot of covers and versions of this ballad. Which one was your favorite, Christian?
Ooh, probably I really dug that like 70s cover that they did on like episode, I think it was episode 3 or 4. Um that like they were all in that like kind of 70s regalia. I don't know. That was probably my favorite version. It was so catchy
Mm-hmm.
sounding. I think you mentioned it best Porfirio earlier, where it kind of sounded like a Fleetwood Mac song.
Mm-hmm.
So that was definitely my favorite.
Cool. Henry, what about you? Did you have a favorite one?
I guess if I were to pick one version, it would be that 70s version also. Like I'm kind of a fan of classic rock anyway, so yeah, that one.
Okay, Michelle,
The 70s version. I mean,
Megan.
Same.
So the majority is the 70s version. Actually, my favorite was no, the OG. I think the OG was still my favorite. But the 70s one was good. Um, so let's talk about the Coven. So the Coven is made up of Agatha, Alice, Jen, Lilia, and then let's just add Rio and Mrs. Hart. Rio end up coming at the end, and Mrs. Hart helped open the gate. Let's just add him to the Coven. Who was your favorite character out of that Coven? Michelle?
oof. Um, at the beginning, like before they opened the door, Alice was my favorite. Like going into the road. I will say she gets picked off quite early on in the show, and so I think once she was gone, then actually Jen really grew on me. By the end of it, I think Jen was one of my favorite characters.
Hmm. Henry?
I'm glad you added Rio because she would be my favorite. Um, I'm a pretty big fan of Aubrey Plaza, so um, kind of a no-brainer for me. But I would also add that she looked really cool. We did the spoiler alert, right? But when
Hmm.
she was revealed to be Death, she had the skull face and everything. That was pretty badass. So,
Hmm.
pretty awesome look with that character design.
For real, yeah. Megan?
Well, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said already, but let's just go with Agatha because, like you said, spoiler, but at the very end, knowing what we know that like Agatha wasn't didn't really know that the road would the door would appear, and so at the very beginning, I think it's cool that like you don't really know what Agatha knows because she's supposed to have walked the road before, so they're all like relying on her, but she's just figuring out just like the rest of them on the road. And I think that's, I don't know, I mean, she's the focal point of the whole show.
Hmm.
She's a really cool character.
She's a baddie.
And Christian?
Um, I did really enjoy them all. I think what was really cool is that each kind of episode kind of focused on one of the different members of the coven. Some, as you saw them go to their very untimely death. Um, but let's see. If I had to pick a favorite, I don't know. I think Aubrey Plaza really stole like every scene she was in. Like I thought she was great as Death.
Yeah, she did wonderful. They all did great. I think my favorite was honestly Mrs. Hart. You know, I just think like she
Poor
brought.
Mrs. Hart.
I know, poor R.I.P. Mrs. Hart. I think she just had a great like sense of humor. And just I think because she was not a witch, that there was just kind of like this like comedic humor that she brought to the coven. So yeah, like I said, we've all said spoiler alert, but there were a lot of twists that came in like a lot of these episodes. And one of the early twists came in episode 3 with, unfortunately, Mrs. Hart's death. What were your thoughts? And like any comic book fan, we kind of know like, are they really dead or not? Did you think they were really dead by the end of the episode? Henry?
Yeah, that was a good point because Marvel does have a tendency to have like fake deaths or characters that come back to life and all this kind of stuff, right? And I would add that this show is very surreal, very campy, and it's not really rooted in a lot of realism. So when a character dies, it really is like, I don't know if they're really dead or what's going on exactly. Um, so yeah, that was kind of my take at the time was like, I'm not really scoring this as a real death because I don't know what's going on exactly. Yeah, I'll put it that way.
Hmm. What about you, Michelle? What were your thoughts when your reactions and thoughts, yeah, to Mrs. Hart's untimely death?
Yeah, after the second episode, I think I'd read some stuff online what people were speculating, and I'd read that a lot of people thought that that black heart that was written by Lilia was actually for Rio. So I think when Mrs. Hart actually died, like immediately kind of clicked. I was like, oh yeah, like it was definitely meant for Rio, and so she had to go for like Rio to enter the road. So like I was pretty sure she was like gone, from at least
Mhm.
like I have to say for the other deaths, I was really hoping that wasn't the
Mm.
case, that they would come back again. But yeah, for Mrs. Hart, I was pretty certain that she was gone.
Mhm. And so then a few episodes later, we had another death with Alice. And, she died, I guess, in the sense of like protecting Agatha from her mother, but it kind of backfired in the end because that's part of Agatha's power, that she takes a witch's power and essentially drains them of their power and kills them. Was that a twist for you, Megan?
Well, I think that I mean at the beginning they announced which is what their what their purpose is there. And
Hmm.
Alice being the protector witch, is that correct? Is that what
Yes. Uh,
I mean, I think it's not like wholly surprising. And I mean, I mean, I think that Agatha can't be trusted by anyone and no one trusts her going into it also. I wasn't like hugely surprised, but like Michelle said, I was kind of devastated because I loved her. I think she was so great, and it was sad to see that's how she went out. And clearly, like um, Billy at the time, or teen at the time, Billy was also devastated too because he didn't expect that to happen, and um, yeah, every death was a sad one, but I think Alice's hit home because she was defending Agatha, and not cool.
yeah, like let me follow up with that. Like, like you said, like Alice was brought on to the coven as the protector witch. Do you justify her death, like protecting Agatha?
Me?
Yeah.
um, well, I mean, she was the protector, but she was like she was died by the hand of one of the members of the coven. So no, I don't think she needed to die. And like later when they're back on the road,
Hmm.
Jean is like, upset at Agatha for draining her power. She's like, "Oh, I didn't have any like say over it. Like it just happened, and like I couldn't stop it." When is that true? Oh,
Yeah.
but so I don't know. I feel like it wasn't justified. Like it didn't need to happen. I don't know.
Mm. Okay. So another big reveal happened in episode 6. We learn, I think by this time you already learned Teen's identity and everything, and whereas Bar Mitzvah, and he meets Lilith, and we find out in that scene that she's the one who placed the sigil on Teen. That was a twist to me. I did not see that coming. Like, did you expect that, Christian?
No, I didn't. Um, and like I think the like although like some parts of the teen reveal I kind of saw coming. Um, but like the sigil was the one. It's like, oh, that's that part got me. I kind of figured out that teen was Billy. Like, I think it, almost immediately. But like, I think the sigil like kind of kept me on my toes a bit. So that was a nice little surprise.
Hmm. And so, a kind of another twist came on later on in the series was, I guess, Lilith's backstory and why she did all the time jumps through the scenes. And if you just rewatch the series, which I did in the last 2 days, it's just the writing's just super smart about how each scene is just her kind of, it's like this like one big monologue of a line in different scenes. And then, unfortunately, when we get to know more about her backstory, is the episode that she dies. She sacrifices herself for the coven. What were your thoughts about that, Michelle?
I really liked that episode. It was super chaotic. Like it was hard to kind of follow as you go through, but I think it's the episode where it's unfortunate because that's where she dies, but it's the one where they actually act like a coven together. It's like the one where I think her and Jen really connect and you learn a lot. And I was actually quite sad when she ended up dying. Like, I think if you're watching it, like you know it's coming from like early on in the episode with just the way she's talking and what's going on. Um, I don't think the show really addresses why necessarily she experiences time out of order when like other witches don't. So I think that was one of the few questions I had kind of like after that was kind of like why her, but I thought it was cool, like, and I really loved that whole episode's vibe too with like the cosplay they have for them and the trial. Like, I mean, loved the whole thing. But yeah, Lilia becomes like I think one of my, I liked Jen and Alice the most, but Lilia is really up there too afterwards.
Hmm. And so, yeah, one thing we learned from that episode is the identity of who Rio actually is, which is deaf. And if you're familiar with the comics, Death is a major character in the Marvel comics, and she's actually Thanos' lover. And it's the reason in the comics why Thanos erases half the universe, because he wants to impress Death, and not because of the MCU reason of not enough resources. Why do you think that Marvel Studios introduces Death here in Agatha and not as Thanos' lover, Henry?
That is a good question. And it's funny you mentioned the Thanos connection in the comics because that did pop in my head when I was watching this show. And the Thanos character is fully developed and he has a lot of screen time over the years in the MCU. But there really is no connection to this character, Death, at all, right? Except the very first time you see Thanos, there is a reference to Death in the post-credit scene to
Mm-hmm.
Avengers 1. Uh, a line is spoken where they say to test the Avengers is to court death, right? And of course, that's a reference to this character, right? As it turned out, this character had nothing to do with the Thanos story in the Infinity Saga, right? Um, so why do you think they did that now? Um, I think it's Kevin Feige just sort of doing his thing, right? There was like this little nugget way back when, and like years and years and years later, there's like a little bit of connective tissue,
Mm-hmm.
and he probably mined the Marvel universe, and he thought like who might be good to put in this show, Agatha All Along, and boom, death. So not only did he find a character that's appropriate for the show, but he tied it into this scene from 12 years ago, right? That's kind of his thing. So that's kind of my take there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest twists, I think you could say, is I guess, identity of who Teen really is. And like we all know now, it's Billy, aka Wiccan, aka the Scarlet Witch's son. Um, but again, like the promotions to this TV show was always just Teen was never given a name or anything. And again, there was this whole like sigil storyline going on. But did you know the identity of Teen very early on, Megan?
Well, I mean, I felt like you had given me evidence prior to the show, like even announcing who Joe Locke's character was as teen. And so I had kind of already gone in thinking that he was Billy Wiccan, what have you. And then I realized like as the show was like starting that this was supposed to be like not like the case. Like Joe Locke and all the rest of the cast were like sealed lips, like they were not letting that like this secret out. And so I think like a lot of other Marvel fans were like pretty sure of his identity, but didn't have like the evidence right away. So no, I wouldn't say I was sure, but and like I remember you sent us something and it was like a video of Joe Locke, I think at the premiere, and somebody was asking him like your character, like, and I think they referenced him to like Billy, and he was like, no, like that's not me, like I'm just teen. So I think he did a good job considering it's such a big I'll praise Sherlock all day, every day. But he did such a good job keeping it under wraps when this is like, you know, he's such a professional for being so young and not having loads of television experience. So I don't know. It was a cool reveal, but I didn't know all along the whole time.
Hmm. What about you, Michelle? Was the reveal like a big shock to you, or did you kind of have a sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think like most of us probably guessed it, especially I think the more they try to make you think it was like maybe her son, like Nicholas,
Mm,
like the more I was like, well, that's obviously not him. And it
mm.
seemed like there's really just between the two of them, like, is it Nicholas or is it Billy kind of a thing. So I don't like it definitely wasn't a surprise, but it was still a really cool reveal. Like I think like the way they revealed him, was a cool shot. It was a cool scene.
Hmm. Henry, anything else you want to add?
I do agree. It wasn't a big surprise to me. Um, Megan was mentioning how you, Porfirio, had sent some stuff about it. Not to say you spoiled it, but you kind of spoiled it a little bit. Just because I know like you're a big Wiccan fan, right? And like you had all this interest in this character. I'm like, why? Why? And then I sort of thought, I wonder, you know? And then when I watched the show, there's like references to Wanda Maximoff, and you know, you just kind of like what Michelle was saying, you kind of put two and two together, and in the end, when the reveal is made, it definitely wasn't a huge surprise.
Hmm. What about you, Christian? Or are you also going to say what everyone else is saying that I spoiled it?
Yeah, I actually don't remember you doing that. I did like, I didn't really know much about Wiccan. I think until like you got really into it, and like you see the hairdo, you kind of like, okay, hairdo. He knows about the witch's road, so he probably has magical powers of some sort. Like, and it is easy to kind of like you kind of do connect the dots. Like, okay, well, he's like he's probably another superhero character. Um, and so, oh, well, why does he have interest in Agatha Harkness? Oh, well, she's probably connected to Wanda. So there's all these kind of little breadcrumbs that they do leave. And I think when you kind of look at the character and you're like, oh, well, let me take a look at the picture of the character and they look kind of similar, that you're like, oh, yep, that's probably Wiccan. So I think I watched the first episode or two and then I texted you and I'm like, I think this is my original idea was this is Wiccan from another universe. Because they were doing a bunch of there's still a lot of multiversal stuff happening in Marvel right now.
Hmm.
So I guessed Wiccan, but I didn't guess what I think I guessed wrong of how he was there.
Hmm. And all I think I told you was just that you had to keep watching because of course, I didn't want to spoil it, but apparently I had spoiled it for other people. So, this is an Agatha show. And I feel like usually when most villains, especially Disney villains, get their own show, it's usually kind of like a redemption kind of story to understand like why they're a villain or anything like that. Like Maleficent, Cruella de Vil, we kind of get like a backstory to why they become a villain, and we as an audience get a little more sympathetic for them and understand why they are. Do you feel like this was the type of story for Agatha, Michelle?
I mean, you definitely got to know her better. Like, you definitely got to know her backstory. They definitely made you feel bad for her at times. I don't think the one thing they ever truly addressed in it was like why she steals witches' powers, whether it's just for the sake of power, or when I was watching it originally, I thought maybe it was a way to like stave off death to save Nicholas for a little bit longer. Like, if she created more bodies, maybe it would keep her busy or something, like something to make her a little bit more sympathetic. But it seems like maybe that's not the case, and just she just steals witches' powers for the sake of doing that and becoming more powerful herself. So I wouldn't say at the end of it all, like I thought she was redeemed or I felt for her, because she still did lots and lots of terrible things. But you definitely did get to know her better, which was cool. I'd actually like to get to know her more, even with like her relationship with Rio. I think there's more story there to tell, but I don't think it's like your classic Disney redemption story.
Okay. So if Agatha wasn't the villain, quote unquote, you know, like who is the villain of this show? Or even like did this show need a villain? Any thoughts on that, Henry?
Oh, that is an interesting question because on paper, Agatha really is the villain of the show. I mean, she literally murdered her coven for powers, right? Um, and she's been doing it throughout eternity, basically, right? Um, and yet she is the central character, right? So, I mean, she's kind of like the villain of the show, the way Thanos was the villain in Infinity War, right? He was the villain, but he was also like the main character, right? So I think I'm going to stick with that. Yeah, she is the main character, but she's also the villain.
Okay. Megan, do you think Agatha was the villain for her own show or
I mean, I don't think she was innocent, but think I think Billy was the villain at the end. It's like he's horrified to realize that he was the one who created the road and that people, his friends, Coven, died on the road, and he just didn't realize that it was like him all along. And I mean, it's kind of like goes back to the Scarlet Witch, like who's the villain? Like, is it justified? Was it purposeful? Uh like I don't know. I think you can't just say like one person was quote unquote the villain, because like all humans, we all do good and bad things. So I wouldn't say Agatha was the sole villain of the show. She did villainous things for sure, but other people also did bad things too.
Mhm. I'm so glad you brought up Scarlet Witch Wanda because I feel like there's low key a kind of repeating theme here. I feel like Marvel has with how they write strong female characters like Agatha and Wanda. Like I feel like a lot of times their story or their character is revolves around grief and somehow they um they work through that grief through anger and then they become quote unquote the villain. Like why do you think that happens, Christian?
Hmm. Why do they work through grief, and why is grief like kind of a central theme?
Yeah, like
Um,
and again, like why does it seem like these strong female characters, like the way they process grief makes them being they it portrays them as the villain. Like we look back at like Doctor Strange 2, again, Wanda's just trying to get her kids, but she is essentially quote unquote the villain for trying to steal America's powers because there's no other way to get her kids, you know?
yeah. So I guess there's like I guess kind of with the grief, there's also kind of like there's like a maternal kind of connection because yeah, there's there you have Agatha and Nicholas. You have Wanda and her two kids. Um, are the two big ones. I feel like there's probably another one that I might be missing in there, but a lot of familial connections, maternal connections, seem to play a strong part. And I think I get, first thing is that it's a very relatable concept. I think that um it's something we as the viewer can kind of instantly connect with and kind of empathize or kind of see their side.
Hmm.
And I think when in that final episode, when we do kind of, meet Nicholas for the first time and like spend time with Nicholas, and then he kind of gets taken away. There's kind of there's a part of you that kind of that does empathize with Agatha, and there is a bit that you kind of see where she's coming from and why she hates death so much. Uh, and also maybe like kind of shows you, oh, maybe this is why she was like working with death, although that might not have been like totally clear.
Hmm. Michelle, any other thoughts you want to add to anything to this topic and conversation about grief with these strong women and how the character revolves around that?
Yeah, I think like I agree with Christian. I think it's just very relatable. It's a very sympathetic trait. So if you're trying to create a villain, but maybe not have them cross that line of like being a permanent villain, maybe like a temporary villain, I think it's a good way to go about it. And it seems like they've done it with two characters that they plan to keep around for a lot longer. Like I think with Thanos, he even had a little bit of that like backstory to him where he was like definitely troubled and came from a bad place. But I think once Thanos throws Gamora off the cliff, like there's like the point of no return for him. Like he's just killed one of the best characters, and one of the people he loved the most for his own vision.
Mm,
And I don't think they've done that yet, at least with Agatha or with Wanda. Like I think they kind of stayed on this side of the line to say, like, yes, they've done bad things. If they keep going this path, then yes, they're probably gonna hit that line. But I don't think they've let them hit that yet, in my opinion. So I think they're still keeping them around to bring them back to like the good side, I guess you could say, or like the hero side. Um, but yeah, I think grief is a good way to kind of justify bad actions where people understand it and kind of will forgive it afterwards.
no, that makes sense. Yeah. So Megan, in one of the episodes, Lilith gives Agatha a list of names that's going to join her coven, right? And one of those quote unquote names is just a black heart. Do you think that's a reference to Rio? Because even Rio says that she has a black heart. Or do you think it's a reference to Billy? Because there's that episode where we learn about Billy's backstory. His boyfriend actually texts him that a black heart text that he loves him, but he sends him a black heart, not a red heart that we usually see. Like, who do you think that black heart is the one Lilith was referencing to and that list of names?
Oh my goodness. Good question. I hadn't realized that until now. Wow. Huh. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it could go either way, or maybe even it could be said for both characters. I'm not sure. Does anyone else want to weigh in? I don't want to take up the time if somebody has some insight onto that thought. I really don't know.
Henry, you wanna give your thoughts?
I don't know either. I have no clue. I have no help here.
Michelle, you wanna give your thought who you think it is?
I Originally, I thought it was Rio for sure, and you just brought up the black tax. I'm like, well, like, obviously could have been him too. So yeah, I don't know.
Christian?
Huh. Yeah, the text message was actually something like I totally missed, but now that you mention it, it's like, oh damn. uh, I think you kind of blew our minds and caught us all off guard right there. So, um, but uh, I don't know. Maybe I'll just pick Rio because Rio seems like the more obvious one. Like she says it. She's death. That's kind of like something you like, kind of like you might think of death first when you think of like the black heart.
Mhm.
So I guess I'll go with that.
Okay, let's just go with Rio then. So, online, Henry, I heard a rumor that this show was supposed to end with a king variant showing up and owning a copy of the Darkhold. But of course, we know all the drama that happened behind the scenes with Jonathan Majors and everything. Obviously, that idea must have been scraped. But what do you think of that storyline of a Kang variant being introduced this into this Agatha TV show and him owning a copy of the Darkhold?
That's interesting. I didn't know that. But now that you mention it, it does make sense. Like um, the way that the MCU was building up to Endgame, there were a lot of little Thanos cameos and references and Infinity Stones popping up all over the place, right? So it makes sense that they would do something similar here, or that they were doing something like that here, right? No longer. Um, that they would, they have a little appearance by a Kang variant in Loki season 2, and Ant-Man 3 and all that, right? So it would make sense that they would like kind of build up to Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars that way, right? But we're living in pretty interesting times, right? Because they did a total like change on all that, right? So they scrapped that, what you just mentioned, Porfirio. So I have a feeling that Feige and company might be scrambling to get Doctor Doom references in upcoming Marvel content. So stay tuned for that, I guess.
Hmm. Michelle, what do you think? Do you think, I don't know, like that King storyline fits with this Agatha show? Or are you happy they just got rid of that and just went with what we were given?
Yeah, I'm actually happy that they cut it, mostly just because I liked the way they ended it with her. Like it was her show, and I kind of liked the fact that it ended like with her. I mean, Billy too, but like it was her from beginning to end, and I feel like maybe having him come in would have taken away a little bit from like her being the main character. So I'm kind of happy they just ended it the way they did.
Okay. So, Christian, according to an interview that Jack Schaffer did with Entertainment Weekly, and just to remind everybody, Jack Schaffer, she's the showrunner of this show, and she was the lead writer for WandaVision. According to an interview she did with Entertainment Weekly, she actually wrote many post-credit scenes for Agatha, but at the end of the day, Marvel Studios decided against it and just felt that it didn't make sense. And as we all know, all of us Marvel fans, we love our post-credit scenes. Do you think Marvel made the right call here or not?
For no post-credit scenes. Um, let's see. The show does end on a bit of a cliffhanger. You know how they go off to find Billy's brother and um like they I guess they could have added something in a post-credit scene. I I'm not gonna say that I was really waiting for it on this one. I think the way they kind of just in a way just ride off into the sunset and then that's that. And then you'll just have to wait for what's next. You know, I like I think we do expect our post-credit scenes almost like it's Marvel, therefore it has to have a post-credit scene. So I don't know. I think it was a nice change of pace. Like, I'm not sure how much more I think how much more I would have wanted. I don't know if they would have had like a big reveal for it, and I think it kind of ends on a nice note. So maybe I'll be with Marvel for that. Although who knows? If we see some of those post-credit scenes, like written on paper, we could have look at it and be like, "Oh man, that's cool. Why didn't they put that in?" You know?
Uh-huh.
So, but maybe it's better to not know and just wonder.
Hmm. So, Megan, in another interview that Jack did with Deadline, she was instructed specifically by Marvel Studios to use the word gone when describing if Wanda is dead or alive. And there's even an episode where Rio says that the witch is gone and all the copies of the Darkhold with her. What do you think, like, about that?
Using the word gone and
Yeah, like she was instructed specifically that that's the word she had to use, that Scarlet Witch was gone.
well, I think just like it was mentioned earlier that in the MCU and specifically like this storyline, it seems like nobody is like super gone forever, maybe. So I think gone is sort of like a limbo state, if you will. Like I think that it's not so like I don't know, written in stone, if you will. I think maybe gone for now or gone from this universe. Um, I mean, uh, even Billy and Tommy, they were maybe gone, and Wanda thought that her children were gone, and she went to go look for them. but Billy was there all along. He was, uh, he had taken over, um, and and in a new form, and so I don't know. I think that it sounds like there's very purposeful language, to maybe, allow the opportunity for her to return
Hmm.
later on.
Henry, anything you want to add to that about the language that was being told to use?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely purposeful, purposefully vague, I guess you could say. I think like a similar wording was used for Steve Rogers, like he's gone. Like we don't know where he is, like, but he's just gone. He's just gone, right? He's not quote unquote dead, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the MCU, like they love to keep things open. Like if they want to bring Wanda back, they can. So they're not gonna say outright she's dead. And then there's the multiverse. So there's all kinds of possibilities. And then to the question, is she gone? Like will we no longer see Elizabeth Olsen in another Marvel movie? I think with much certainty we shall see her again, so whether it's a variant, from a different timeline or whatever. Like I think we're gonna see her back, particularly um, after the success of this show, right? The success of WandaVision and the success of Agatha All Along. It seems like there is um, a lot of interest in these characters and Wanda Maximoff for sure.
Hmm. So, Michelle, like, I think one thing we have talked about during this episode is the identity of teen and who they are. But do you think there was just a lot of attention to everybody just trying to figure out who Teen's identity was and who Teen is? And you think that maybe took away from the focus of Agatha? Because, I mean, she is supposed to be the central character.
She is, and actually, I don't know, I kind of want to because you had a really good point about like Megan had read something about someone who commented on the fact that Billy had such a big role in Agatha's show. So I'll let you comment on it because I mean, if you want to, because I don't want to take your. I have the same opinion as you, and I don't want to take it from you since you came up with it.
Yeah, it wasn't my idea, but I had seen it online, and Michelle and I had kind of discussed it previously, that like it's such a female centered show, and it really is Agatha's show. I mean, her name's in the title, um and I think that, like you said, maybe the concern is that with this character of everyone speculating who they are, that maybe it would take the focus away from her. But and at the end, I'd seen some people saying that they're worried that Agatha was going to end up sacrificing herself for Billy to live on, and that her show wouldn't even become hers at the end. Like that all of these strong female characters will have died or sacrificed themselves in order for him to live on or to continue on. And I think they did, personally, I think, a really good job of sort of walking the balance between sort of letting that storyline play out. But Agatha makes a specific point, or Agatha's ghostly figure, saying that I didn't sacrifice myself for you. It was like a strategic move or something. And that she's still very much like present and there, and like will be there with him through the next phase of whatever is next for Billy or Wiccan. So I
Okay.
kind of
Uh-huh.
everyone obviously making really like the, and then Agatha too.
Uh-huh. What about you, Christian? Any thoughts on that?
Um, oh, that is a pretty good point about how it's like maybe that would take away from the show, that like it would all be in it, Agatha would kind of be Billy all along, at the end. Um, but like I thought it did strike a pretty good balance. Let's see. Because let's see. I'm kind of blanking. What was the question again?
Was like the emphasis on who Teen's identity was, like too much like attention, like too many people were paying attention to that, and then like if it was revealed like it was Wiccan, that too many people would be like, "Oh my gosh, like this is a show that nobody's paying attention to Agatha and more interested in who the
Oh,
identity of Teen is."
oh, as Wiccan.
Uh-huh.
I could see that. Because like I said, and I think the way we were talking about the identity of Wiccan was that it was something we kind of like guessed like fairly early on, and it seemed like there were a lot of like little breadcrumbs, and we just kind of like had already kind of had an idea. So it like for me it wasn't really something I thought about. It was like something I was just more of like, okay, when are they going to finally say when he's going to reveal himself as Billy Maximov? And it was like this big dramatic moment, and but I think like the way there's like a big we talked about the relationship between Agatha and Nicholas, you know, her son, and like how that was like there was like a big level of grief there that comes out at the end. I think in a sense um it almost kind of like Billy reminds Agatha of her son quite a bit, as she kind of says at the end. And so the that kind of forms a bit of the connection of the two. I think Agatha is a pretty big villain, but having that when you see that connection kind of form between two characters, you're kind of a little more instantly drawn to the characters, even if one of them is like a villain, you know, even if that one is like you find out killed a whole lot of people over the course of you know many years. So in a way, it kind of like having the character of Billy and the fact that they kind of kept him away from saying his name as Billy, you kind of get to know who the character is, and it kind of allows that relationship to kind of grow in the early stages before they can kind of hit you with the reveal. So, um, I would say, yeah, probably it may have taken a little bit of it. But you know, I didn't mind it, especially as someone is like I said, I kind of guessed that it was Wiccan. Like I was like, oh, that's probably Wiccan, like immediately.
Mhm.
But that's just me.
Yep, yep. Okay, so I got a last few questions coming up here before we get into our ratings. But, I feel like generally speaking, we've said like, good positive thoughts about the show and how we feel about it. Is there anything that you didn't like from it, Michelle?
Oh, me first. I've already mentioned, I think there's a couple things that just didn't like they could have addressed more. For example, like Lilia, kind of why she has the power she has, like why does she time jump kind of. Um, I think you got a really good kind of top level about like witches, which I think the first time Marvel we ever got this view of like what witches really are, how they have like obviously different power sets, like they're not all created the same. And talk a little bit about like blood witches versus obviously there's got to be something else that's not like an inherited witch. Um, so I think my main really I really like the show, so like I don't have a lot of critiques for it. But I think if I had one, it'd be just I'd like to know more. To be honest, I felt like they introduced a lot of characters and they came and went pretty quickly. I know you don't want a show that drags on forever. You don't want to have it's just not like the Marvel way to have like tons and tons of endless episodes. But like I was hungry for a little bit more afterwards. Like I wouldn't have mind like maybe one or two more episodes there, but really it's my only complaint.
Hmm. Henry, do you have any negatives about the show?
Well, I do. Um, so it's interesting, like our conversation has mainly been kind of a recap more than a review, right? We
Hmm.
haven't been pointing out positives and negatives and critiquing it so much, right?
Uh,
Um, so it's the vibe has been more celebration over critique. Yeah. Um, so I don't want to like stomp on the vibe too much. And I will say too, particularly now. You know, it is November 8th, as you said, Porfirio, 2024. Something happened a few days ago that we don't need to talk about too much, but it happens every 4 years in early November. But right now, um, I think division is something we don't really want so much, right?
Uh-huh.
So I will say that my viewpoint is probably at odds with a lot of folks in the room right now. And I wasn't a big fan of this show. Um, so I'm not gonna, roast it exactly. But yeah, I'll point out some things I didn't like too much.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and I will say too that the show really wasn't for me, and that's okay. That is okay. I'll be the first to say that I am happy that a lot of people are enjoying this show, are resonating with the show. Super cool. I love that. I'm happy for all those folks. And, the show does bring middle-aged women to the forefront. You look at the Coven, it brings an openly queer character to the forefront in Billy. That's awesome. And then sure enough, female audiences and LGBTQ audiences are really digging the show. So like that's awesome. Like that's super cool. Marvel's doing something different. I advocate that, completely down with all of that. Yeah. So what it boils down to is the show really wasn't meant for me. And when I watched it, yeah, I didn't really connect with it in any way. So what it was for me was I was kind of confused, to be honest, because I felt like it was kind of a musical, it was kind of a comedy, it was kind of a horror show, right? But on all those levels, it didn't really work for me. It was a musical that had music that I didn't dig all that much. It was a comedy that had jokes that I didn't find that funny. And it was a horror show that I didn't really find scary. So on all levels, it just didn't really work for me. So, I guess I'll just leave it at that for now. It really didn't connect with me in any way.
Thank you, Henry. Tell us how you really feel now. Um, Christian, what about you? Did you have any negatives for the show?
Um, let's see. I guess there's a part of me that kind of feels where Henry's coming with it. I did find myself enjoying the show. Um, I th- and I will say I'm glad that the show really was something different. And it really does feel like something different. It feels like they really tried something new here. And they tried a lot of new things. Um, and so I will say that like it took me a while to get into the show. I really was not into episode 1 and 2 at all. I think that like the whole like HBO parody of episode 1 where she's like a cop and she's kind of in her own like that like psychosis trap that Scarlet Witch puts her in at the end of WandaVision. Um I was like there was a part where I'm like, "Okay, what is this? Get on with it." I knew what was going on, but I wasn't really digging it. It wasn't really till they got on the road or like when at the end of episode 2 when they're singing the song, casting the spell, the road opens and they kind of get chased inside the door by the demons. I was like, "Okay, I'm starting to dig this. This is pretty cool." But I will say like the first like couple episodes I was like, "Okay, man, where is this going? Not
Mhm.
feeling this." But the show, I'll admit, did really grow on me and like by the end, I was digging it. So I
Cool.
think if I had a major complaint, it would probably be episodes 1 and 2, even though I think the context that they kinda get put in, because there's a lot of, flashbacks to those,
Mhm.
do kind of smooth that a bit.
Mhm. So just a slow start. That's just it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Megan, any negatives that you had with the show?
No.
Simple answer. We love it. Okay, I guess final question that I have, like it's a Marvel show, part of a larger MCU franchise, part of the multiverse saga. Where do we go from here? Like, where do you think it's next for our characters? Agatha, Billy, do they go look for Tommy? Do they go look for Scarlet Witch? Are we going to see more Scarlet Witch? What thoughts run through your mind when you thought of what's the next chapter for these characters in the MCU universe? Megan?
My immediate thought, and this is uh, um maybe not related to like the future of some of these characters, but I'm wondering if anyone like who has a greater understanding of like the comics and how it would compare to what they might do in the future and knows like why do you think that they like spared Jen and like she got out at the end? Like does she have like, have further storyline to know what her deal is? Um, sorry. That's my only question, and I'm sorry. I'm a little sleepy. Can you please repeat the question one more time?
No, where do you think we go from here? What do you think is next?
Right.
Where do you think we're going to see these characters again?
Yeah. I don't know. I want to see where if they can find Tommy, Billy's brother. I want to see
Where where do you think they're going to show? You think they're going to show in the Vision show or like
where.
Agatha Part 2? Like where do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a good enough grasp on the um the future of the MCU.
Okay.
Maybe Vision show. No, I don't know.
Okay. Henry?
Yeah, I mean, I had heard that there's a Vision show in the works, Vision Quest, I think they're tentatively calling it. So it would make sense that that is like the third part of this saga, right? WandaVision, Agatha All Along, then Vision Quest. So certainly we could see some overlapping characters there. Um, for Wiccan specifically, though, I think he has a pretty bright future with the Young Avengers. I think we've talked about this a bit before, but there's a bit of assembling going on there, right? So I think there's no question that he's going to be part of some sort of young superhero team up in the near future.
Hmm. Michelle, where do you think we go from after finishing up Agatha? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, there better be some sort of like tearful, joyous family reunion after all they've put us through for these two episodes, these two seasons. I don't know if it's gonna happen in the Vision show, which I've heard of about 5 seconds ago. So I think I don't want to wait too long for it. So I'd love it if something does happen in that show rather than having us wait such a long time between like WandaVision and Agatha. Um, but yes, I'll be very disappointed if there's not some sort of family reunion soon.
Okay. And Christian?
Hmm. So I think on a family, if they do a family reunion, um, I feel like they're saving Scarlet Witch for a big moment. They're gonna have Wanda come back. Like I have a feeling it's gonna happen. Um, but it's gonna be they're gonna save that for a movie and like an Avengers movie, I think. So I think in say like Secret Wars or Doomsday is kind of when they're gonna save that. And I think I can imagine like kind of your big end game like battle that like maybe right before that or during that, that's when they can have everyone gets together in the final fight, and that's kind of when you see Scarlet Witch and Wiccan meet for the first time. And then there's kind of like you have some sort of moment or payoff, like maybe after the battle where you see them like talk and um like kind of talk and catch up, and you really kind of see the family unit for the first time. So that's my guess on where it could lead next.
Okay. And with that, let's get into our ratings. So, out of 5 stars, what do we rate it? One being horrible, not like it at all. Nope, not no skipping, or 5, loving it. Let's start with Christian.
Yeah, like I said, this was a bit of a slow start for me. I didn't really care for it, but I think as the show went on, I enjoyed it more and more until episode 6, where I was like, I really loved the part where just Agatha was just killing people, and I'm like, yeah, that's so cool. All right, I'm into this. Um, that whole montage, and so I think it just steadily kind of grew on me over time. I think on the other hand, there's a bit of me that kind of feels where Henry's saying. It feels like the show wasn't for me, and it's feels like I wouldn't point to anything that didn't work for me, but sometimes I wasn't feeling it as much. I think I'm feeling, but I do think it's really solid. I think the show is definitely something I would recommend, and I did have a really fun time with, and I'm glad Marvel is really doing a lot of new things here. So I think a 3 out of 5 for me.
Okay, 3 out of 5. Let's go next with the birthday girl, Megan. What do
Oh,
we give it out of 5 stars?
yeah, so I don't think it's a big surprise that I would give it 5 stars because I do think I completely respect and understand the critiques that everyone's laid out and maybe that the show just wasn't really for everyone, but I think the show was for me. I had great expectations of it going in and I felt like it met all of my and exceeded my expectations. I thought the casting was so great, and we've talked a lot about the plot. I think it was done in such an interesting way. The sets were so cool, and the costumes. So I thought the whole thing was just really top notch. I loved it. Would recommend 5.
5 out of 5. Okay, let's go with the birthday boy, Henry. Out of 5, what do we give it?
Out of 5. So I am going to give this a 1. But I will say that you said a 1 being horrible. I don't want to say a 1 horrible 1. Nor am I giving it an angry 1. Like in the past, I have given 1s in the past. But they usually are angry. I'm angry about something, right? So this is not an angry 1. This is very much what I said before, a not for me 1. Yeah. Um, so that said, this show might not be for you, you know. It does resonate strongly with certain audiences, um, but it has not resonated with a lot of other audiences, and that's kind of where I fall. Um, I'll note this too. In the past, Marvel has attempted um, to have diverse representation and to reach out to certain audiences, perhaps some that have may not have been represented so great in the past. I'll call out films like Black Panther, Shang-Chi, Captain Marvel, and those are all films that I enjoyed. And there was definitely an attempt to draw in the mainstream audience in addition to targeting certain audiences, right? Um, you know, those movies had pretty familiar plots, right? They played it safe, and it just so happened that the characters uh were looked very different than superheroes from the past, right? So it was cool that uh you know, there was such diverse representation, but the storytelling was fairly basic and familiar, right? And I appreciated that, you know, like for a movie like Captain Marvel, where again, maybe a movie that wasn't really for me, it was told in such a way that it was palatable to me, right? So I ended up enjoying that. With this show, Agatha, I feel like that effort was not made. And I'm not faulting it for that. Like, I just feel like it was unabashedly campy and it just like it strutted its stuff and kind of didn't make that attempt to be palatable to a mainstream audience to draw in people like me, right? This is for a certain audience. They're gonna love it, and we're just gonna run with that. Yeah. So I will say that. I will say that. So I feel like I might not be alone there where you're kind of folks, some audience is a bit turned off because there wasn't that attempt, you know? Um, so yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. The show wasn't for me. Um, but it's notable. It is notable that that attempt to make it more palatable was not quite there. Is a bit of risk, a bit of a risk for Marvel. I think it was a risk that paid off, to be honest, judging by how well the show has been received. Um, but yeah, definitely an interesting experience. I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 5.
Okay. And Michelle, you out of 5.
Follow Henry. Um, I'll start with my 5 out of 5 because I actually very much quite enjoy the show. I do agree with what Henry said. I do feel like they did something different with this one. They didn't do the traditional Marvel kind of formula that they've done in the past. And I think having watched pretty much all the Marvel projects that have come out, I think that misses a lot for especially like a female audience. I really liked Black Widow. I thought Marvel did her absolutely dirty and pretty much everything she's been in, including her own movie. I thought they just it was Florence Pugh's movie, and I was afraid maybe they'd do something similar in here. And I really felt like they did a good job with Wanda making Wanda the main character of her own stories, Agatha making her the main character of her story. And I felt like they just did something different where even though with Black Widow in the movie, it was a very female centered cast, it was still an action film. Like, the last 20 minutes of the entire movie is them like falling out of the sky, everything's on fire. It's like this massive fight scene at the end. So it's still very much like an action hero film. And so I think that, there's been a lot of that in Marvel. And I like a good action film too, but I wouldn't say it's like my favorite go-to movie or TV show or anything like that. It's just not my favorite genre. So I think when they did something different that, like, for me, the jokes landed in the show. I thought it was funny. I don't actually like to be scared that much. I thought like the horror parts of it were just scary enough that it was fun to watch, but actually like freak me out or anything. So like I think I probably was like the intended audience, and so it really hit. So it was like a 5 out of 5 for me. That being said, too, like I did watch it with my husband as well as like Megan, and he gave it a 9 out of 10. We weren't doing the 5-star rating. But when we're watching it together, and he usually has very different tastes than I do when it comes to things. So that being said, like if you're considering watching it, I think giving it a try is worth it, because just because you're not like a female doesn't mean you won't like the show. Like I think it's worth giving it a try. That being said, if traditional Marvel is your thing, if action is your thing, if you like the big fight scenes, there's none of that in here. Like there's really not that much in that same traditional way. So I guess take it as you will.
Okay. And so for me, is it a surprise that I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5? I feel like for me, this checked all the right boxes. Like Henry brought up all these like things like, is it a musical? Is it a horror? Is it a witchy Agatha TV show? And for me, I'm like, I don't care. It's a mix of all. Like, give it to me all. Like, it's a chaotic mess that for me works. I love the whole witches characters and us like because all this magic sorcery stuff because I feel like we've never seen this in the MCU. Like sure we've seen Doctor Strange's sorcery, but we haven't seen like witchcraft and witches, like that was hinted in WandaVision, and as we all know I love WandaVision, so this was just really up my alley. And then I've said in the past, Wiccan is just my guy. Like I love that character. So for him to have his introduction into the MCU was just the cherry on top for me. I love the music in it. The costumes were awesome. The the set designs, it just hit all the right boxes for me. And for that, I give it an instant 5 out of 5. And so for that, like we wrap up every episode, let's end it with a comics recommendation. And so I have this cool, awesome comic here for all y'all. If you want to learn more about Wiccan, is this young comics called Young Avengers, The Children's Crusade. This is the first story I learned about Wiccan, and it kind of goes into a backstory about like how he gets his powers and how he realizes he's the Scarlet Witch's son. And him and the Young Avengers go on a journey to look for the Scarlet Witch. And plot twist, spoilers, they find the Scarlet Witch living and gonna marry soon Doctor Doom, which, as we know now, is the MCU big baddie now. So maybe they're gonna MCU will adapt some info from this or not. We'll wait and see. But all of it just seems like it's all coming together. The introduction of Wiccan, the Young Avengers, Scarlet Witch, whether or not she's dead or not, and the introduction of Doom. Like, to me, I just think this is a good intro if you want to learn more about Wiccan and his connection with Scarlet Witch, and maybe possibly what we're going to see more in Doomsday and Secret Wars. So definitely recommend it. And with that, we'll call it a night from Porfirio, Henry, Christian, Megan, and Michelle.